You. Are you the one that... I am looking for someone. He said it would be a man, but you're just a... I wasn't expecting it. Our teacher was saying...
Do you mean Jesus? He told me you would arrive today.
Yes. You are the man.
I guess.
But you're just a boy.
Says you. This way. This is the place. My family is honored to provide this space and to cook the meal for you. Do you have any requests or requirements?
I just have a question.
Of course.
Why do you carry the water? Isn't that a woman's job?
I carry the water because there's no woman in my family. My mother is dead, and I live here with my uncle. I do the woman's work because it needs to be done.
I see. I'm sorry I asked without realizing.
There's nothing to be sorry for. I'm not ashamed. I'm happy to take on any responsibility this life has given me. You see, my mother died, but I did not.
You seem so wise for your age.
You are very kind, but I assure you I am very much still a child.
How long have you known our teacher? I never knew of you before.
About a year. We've not spent that much time with him, but we know the healing he can do.
You've been healed?
Yes.
How could this have happened and his disciples not know?
I did not know until recently that he had disciples. Disciples that followed him. I'm a disciple, but I never leave my home.
How did he heal you?
After my mother died, my uncle's inn was suffering. Well, my uncle was suffering. My mother was his younger sister, and he couldn't bear the idea that she had died before him. He always said it was against God to go that way, that it wasn't natural. He could hardly look me in the eye for a while because he said I looked like her. On top of that, the load she carried at this inn was larger than we knew, and we couldn't handle all the work. And I had been getting into fights about the water. You're right, it is woman's work in this region, and my mother is dead, so I do the work. I was embarrassed to do it for a while because there was a boy about my age on my path who would make fun of me. He knew just how to anger me. Several times, I had come home with blood on my hands and on my clothes. My uncle would get furious at me. He would... Needless to say, we were both suffering. One day, your teacher entered the front door of our inn, asked for a room to stay the night. My uncle offered him a room, and I didn't hear the rest of the conversation, but when I walked out, my uncle was in tears and in his arms. I mean, being held up by your teacher. I had never seen my uncle cry. My uncle looked up and saw me, and he held out his arms, and I could see the glistening wet in his eyes, and I ran to him. And he cried harder. The man you call your teacher was crying too. They were both crying. After what felt like forever, my uncle laughed and thanked him for his words and told him he was right. I still don't know what he said to my uncle, but something changed that day. He stood upright again. He looked me in the eye again, and he praised your teacher's name.
Why didn't you cry?
Oh, I cried later. Your teacher spent the night, and the next morning I went to the well to pick up some water like usual, and on the way back, that boy was there. He made fun of me again, and we fought. And when I returned home with blood on my clothes and on my hands, I was afraid. Afraid my uncle would do what he always did when I came home beat up and bleeding. He would beat me too. But he wasn't there when I got home. Jesus was there. And for a second, I was even more afraid of him than I was of my uncle. He is young and strong, your teacher is, and I imagine he could give me quite a beating if he wanted to. I followed his eyes, and he walked right up to me, and then he knelt down and opened his arms and held me. I closed my eyes, and the image of my mother's face flooded my mind. I mean, flooded. I yelled, and tears flew out of my eyes. I don't know how long I was like that, but I remember looking at my feet, and they were dangling there. Like
someone was holding you.
He was doing more than holding me. He returned me to myself. My uncle, too. We had both died with my mother, and he raised us from the dead. We are honored to provide him with a space and a meal for this special occasion.
Thank you for your story. I will let the others know that this is where we'll share our Last Supper. It is our honor, too, to be in the company of disciples.